that fascial plane was involved at all, what I had her do was then I had her take her left hand and bring it over to her right hip to tension that fascial line and then retest to see what happened.
How do you use the screening for fascial meridians, and how do you use that? Is it based on how they're walking in? You can kind of do a gait analysis, posture,
A little bit,
or is it very specific?
It's I generally use it more specifically. So I'll watch gait patterns. I don't do okay, let's get out and let's walk, but just how are they moving? How are they sitting? When they're talking, what position are they rotated in? How are they sitting in the chair? Those types of things. But then it really comes in with the orthopedic testing and things like that. And so what I will generally try to do, and this is still something that I'm kind of just playing with and trying to figure out, but a good example is I had a patient who had some SI pain that kind of didn't really fit like the classic mold of sacroiliitis, but I also knew that she had she had right SI pain and left shoulder pain, and so there's the that back line that's going to cross over from the hip to the shoulder. And so when we were doing straight leg raise, it was at like 75, 80 degrees, and she was starting to feel that tension in the low back. And so to see if that fascial plane was involved at all, what I had her do was then I had her take her left hand and bring it over to her right hip to tension that fascial line and then retest to see what happened. And she started getting her back pain out around like 55, 60 degrees. So then that to me is like, okay, I know that I can go and treat SI and get benefit, but long term we need to do something about this shoulder as well, because that fascial connection is dysfunctional or it's impacting it to some degree, that treating both would be beneficial. So that's kind of how I incorporate that. And then just with like our big direct connections like IT band onto tib anterior, right? If someone's got shin splints that are lateralizing onto the outside as opposed to the inside, and we know maybe tib anterior might be involved a bit, how's IT? And so it's looking at those connections as well.
And then if you were to address the shoulder, the fascial connections of the shoulder, what would you do? Would it be gua sha? Would it be cupping? Would it be fascial work manually?
Generally, I'll just do PRP in the area as well. And so with that comes, there's a doc out of Austin, Texas. His name's Brad Fullerton, who actually was the one who introduced me to incorporating the fascial meridians in with the injections. And so what we do is we do basically sonopalpation, and we're looking for where we have basically increased compressibility of tissue planes. So if you have, and maybe we'll look at it in ultrasound today, but if you have a tissue that is not degenerative, when you compress it, right, it's going to maintain its physical properties. So when you compress, it's going to have some bounce back to it, and it's not going to collapse on itself. When you have tissues, and we see this a lot with infraspinatus, but when you compress those tissues, what you'll see is and it's generally usually the deepest layer, is it will kind of compress as opposed to, it will collapse as opposed to compressing. So it doesn't maintain its tension. Yeah. And so we'll treat those areas with PRP, because his theory is that's where you have this loss of tissue integrity that's resulting in a weaker fascial sling that then is contributing to other areas. So my guess would be gua sha and things like that could be of benefit as well. I just haven't explored that because.
So where do you put the PRP? Is it intramuscular in that case, or is it?
Yeah. Cool. And then so generally I'm actually going to use PPP.
Okay.
In the past I would have used PRP, but this past year enough research has come out showing that when we use PRP intramuscularly, we're actually causing increased fibrosis, and long term that can actually cause issues. And so I've switched all my intramuscular injections over to PPP.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like an amino acids or a peptide instead of a PPP? Like a vitamin C or something like a collagen-based precursor?
Oh, like just orally?
Or in addition to injection?
I mean, I think PPP works well enough, and if we're already in there for PRP, I don't think it's...
Yeah, if you have a solution.
Yeah. And I don't think... I think, you know, and I know we've talked about this in past weeks with using like vitamin C and with injections, but I think that's the only time I would use that is to try and protect cartilage from the chondrotoxicity of lidocaine or ropivacaine or whatever you were using. So, so I don't think I'd use vitamin C for something like that.